So good morning, Charged Up Studio listeners. Welcome back once again to another episode where you get charged up for success. I'm Dana Olivo, your host and CEO of Market Atomy, LLC. So today's special guest is a very dear friend of mine who I have known for, how long now, Trevor? 3, 4, 5 years?
It would come up to about 4 or 5 years, yes, for sure.
Close to it, yes. So Trevor is currently located down in Brazil because he can't get back home.
Yeah.
But he made it just in time to visit his wife down there before COVID kicked in. But what Trevor specializes in is website A.D.A. compliance. And this is a very interesting subject to me because I didn't even know that by law that we had to get our websites, have our websites completely compliant for A.D.A. And so we're going to let Trevor, lead us down this path that we need to be taking as business owners to protect ourselves from what could potentially be a very costly mistake. So let's all welcome to the Charged Up Studio podcast, Mr. Trevor Gibbs. Hello, Trevor.
Hey, Dana, thank you very much for this opportunity, and everyone who's listening, good morning to you, and hopefully we'll share this pathway and hopefully we'll learn something new along the way. It's a very interesting subject, and when I first got into this, at first I was, like most, a disbeliever. I'd heard prior, probably about 6-7 years ago, that it was an ethical thing to do, because having come from the UK, a lot of websites there were doing it for the main reasons, are we excluding somebody? Well, we can't have that. Let's make sure we make it an inclusive decision. Once I heard about this here in the US, it was a whole different ball game, and it has legal implications. So yeah, very interesting.
Let's start from the beginning first, okay? Sure. You have always been involved in technology, websites, more on the nonprofit side, but now you've moved into this A.D.A. compliance because you see a need for this. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about your history and what you've been doing for the last 20 months.
Oh, well, as you said, I've been in technology for multiple of 20, 30 years, different various shapes and forms. And, having started off with a marketing company, and then we really focused in the UK with non-profits. And that's where the non-profit bug bit me, and it never let go. Through the years, obviously using technology, because non-profits tend to be one of the industries that didn't believe technology was suited to them. And it is suited to everybody. It's just the way you have to think about using it to bend to the needs that you have. So yes, that technology bug, once I was here in the US, was something that would grow, and it really helps those small, medium non-profits to engage with their community and their donors. And that's what really drove this, and that's how I got onto this A.D.A. compliance. I was at can't remember the name of it, but it was a networking group that met once and talking about strategizing for non-profits. And at that point, I had a nice back screen demonstrating a mobile app I'd created for my client, QR code, and the gentleman there scanned it and came across and kind of says, "Oh, questions? Yes, Trevor, I'm interested in your app here and the website that you've got for the nonprofit." Yes. Why didn't you make it compliant? Well, I didn't make the website. Yes, but that doesn't matter. There is a requirement to make sure that you don't alienate anybody or leave anybody out from your website or from your technology circumstances. So that way you cannot be, what's the word I'm looking for? You just cannot my mind's gone blank on that. I don't know why. But you just cannot leave people alienated or excluded. That's the word I'm looking for. You can't exclude people just because of technology. You've got to make it all inclusive. So long story short, I did some homework and found out, yes, there is a legal requirement. 95% of websites have no accessibility at all. 600 websites are produced every hour in the whole world. And when it comes to development, if anybody's in marketing, they will think, well, we all talk about SEO marketing. Well, SEO marketing, in very simplistic terms, when it relates to ADA, is when you've got your images on your website. If you don't put an alternative text descriptor there describing what images are, Google cannot do a rank on the words you've used to describe those images to help boost your website. That same technology, that same description is then used for people with screen readers to understand what was actually in the picture they couldn't see in the first place. So you've actually got two needs with one solution, which I think thought was ideal. When we all go to learn new skills and build websites, we're told this, but we don't think about the inclusive side of it.
Right. Wow. As small business owners, we'll go into Wix, a lot of them will go into the easy like Stripe and Wix and things like that to build their websites. And they don't understand about the ADA compliance and things like that. Can you kind of give us an idea of what is considered ADA compliant designs? What should we be considering when we are developing our websites?
Well, first of all, I would always say, when you do a website for yourself, read the WCAG guidelines. Some knowledge about what's required. It can be for people with auditive problems, so therefore you've got to think about closed caption on videos. Could be something where like I just briefly mentioned, you have an image. That image in itself needs to have an alternative text descriptor. And the longer that text descriptor is, the better it is. Because not only does it help with the SEO rankings, the more you describe a picture. If you took my background at the moment, you can see there's a hand holding the phone. Well, okay, but it doesn't say much. But if I was actually to describe it a little bit more, I could say a lady's hand with painted red fingernails holding a phone, pressing the screen. So now I can build up that image of exactly as opposed to a hand holding the phone. We might have to say it's a smartphone as opposed to a phone. Just changing a couple of little text words makes a big improvement for the visually impaired. Now, of course, we have to think of things like, do you have flash or moving objects on there? People with ADHD and epilepsy, these sort of things can trigger that. People with colored blindness. I've seen some companies, and let's take McDonald's, a brand that we all know. Their color is a bright red and a bright yellow. Well, for some people, if you put that on a website, that could be too glaring. That could actually start triggering certain people to lose concentration on the website in which they're using because it's too bright. I really want to maybe take that shade down 50%, maybe 80% because it's too bright for me. Now, when you think about that, you think, well, I've now got a design element. How do I design what I love to be my company logo, my company branding to suit all? Well, I like my design. I want it. And why shouldn't you? You should have that. What we need to provide is a tool for those people that may find it's too bright for them to make it a lower contrast or in reverse. So that way, you as the business owner can still keep your own branding. You can have your graphic designers to design something that you like, because that's why you want to stand out in the crowd.
Wow.
This
can get pretty costly doing things like this.
It can when it's custom made. Yes, it really can. And I can see why a small business owner will look at and say, well, it's not necessary. I can't afford to do that at the moment. which is why I found a solution, because working for a nonprofit, like most small businesses, their budgets are not dedicated to tech and marketing. Is all the main cost is running the nonprofit and fundraising. Everything else has to come out at a cost, and it has to be justified at a reasonable cost. So your solution has to be simple.
Yeah.
I can help with that simple solution. And you have to take, like in most businesses, if you start off and say, well, can I be 100% compliant? Well, do we live in utopia where everything is 100% perfect? No. But the most ratio that we look at is the 80-20 rule. And if most people understand the 80-20 rule, let's address that first. Because for the 20% we might not address today, let's say, I understand that there is a need. I understand that I'm doing my best to address the majority. But if there's a specific need that I have not addressed, please address it with me personally, and together we can help you to resolve any complications of using my website.
So
that's an ethical way.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the compliant issues. Like, you took a look at my website and you said that there were some areas that were very compliant, and then there were some areas that I needed to work on. One of the areas that you talked about is the size of the type.
Correct.
Okay. What is a minimum type size that should be used?
Depends on how you format the whole thing. But, you know, if you want to use a point section, 18 is great. Now, some people say, well, 18 is too big.
Yeah.
It also depends on the font that you're using.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, anybody that's written, if you put everything in Word and you then take that out and put it onto a website, that 10 or 12 is small.
Right.
So getting to 18 on a lot of fonts is not really that bad.
I noticed that the sizes are different between online and, you know, web-based fonts and, you know, the Word fonts and things like that.
One uses the term point and the other uses pixels.
Okay.
So depending on who's doing it or where you're actually creating the text version, that is where people is going to get confused.
Doesn't it also depend on the resolution of your screen and stuff like that too?
It does. And that's why you can't say font 18 is ideal, because if I have a very high ratio screen resolution, I could make that 18 font look like a 10. If it's a screen where I'm not very important about high resolution, it could look like it's a font size 36. So how would a web designer deal with that today, even without the compliance? Well, that's again where you can have a lot of imagery auto sizing, and a lot of that text can auto size as well to adjust itself to the screens, which is where you come across about having mobile friendly websites. That's what that does. It's adaptive.
Okay. So what else are compliancy issues?
Well, color contrast is one. The standard industry would be 4.5 to 1. So for argument's sake, if you think of white, gray, charcoal, gray, and black, well, which colors are most prominent on a website today? Most people use a white background or an off-white background, and then they put gray text over it. That ratio contrast is not 4.5. And that's where probably 80% of websites fail on the first step. Now, if I think black is too harsh, which sometimes it can be, that contrast can be really hard against a white background. I could use a charcoal dark gray for that. Or even, which a lot of people forget to use, if you ever thought about using navy blue. Navy blue, again, it's a little bit softer than black, but it also has the color depth of blackness in there.
Boy. So what has brought all of this about? As far as why is it so important now to really be cognizant of your site being ADA compliant? What's driving all this?
There's two aspects of that. The first one I'll address because I don't like it, and we'll get the elephant out of the room straight away.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Well, I have a saying that anything you may say or anything that you may do means I can sue you. And that's very relevant here in the United States. And because of that, most actions are taken when people get sued. If you get sued, most businesses are going to think twice. Well, I don't want to be sued. What am I going to do? I need to protect my reputation. So therefore, I'll settle out of court first, and I will take that route. Now, because of that legal side of it, unfortunately, there are unethical people in every industry, and people can easily research on the internet for named lawyers who would be handicapped or disabled, depending, again, we don't want to be offensive because in the UK, handicapped is more offensive than disabled, but here in the US, it's not. So I don't want to put my foot in it there either. But if you did a research there, you'll find that there are some lawyers that just really spend most of their time tracking websites and businesses to raise those lawsuits so they can make money. Now, some of them can make anywhere from $7 million a year. And there are some people who just with a disability that has no legal background. We have one in Florida. She was based near Tampa. Last year, she raised 150 cases against small local businesses. Why? Because they were local to her. She was also at home like all of us. So anything that she wanted to go and purchase online, if the website wasn't compliant, there was a lawsuit case for. Out of that 150, 24 of them are no longer in business this year. Why would that be? Now, I'm not saying this lawsuit put them out of business, but no, we're still in recovery mode. If you're struggling and you get a large lawsuit, well, your reputation is everything. You don't want your few customers that are being loyal to you to know that you have a lawsuit because your website's not compliant. So therefore, you want to send this away very quietly. But if you're suffering with business and you're struggling to pay staff wages or keep stock on the shelves because you now have to pay higher prices, it was easier for those small businesses to go out of business, take the website down, wait for the storm to pass. And I'm hoping that while they've negated that legal aspect, they may come back into business in 22 or sometime soon, or they'll be doing something newer.
So what you're saying is that there are some attorneys out there that are taking a proactive, although possibly underhanded approach to making money by filing suits against these small companies or even large companies, you know, just to line their own pockets. Not that they're being affected themselves personally, so they don't have to be disabled or handicapped or anything like that. They could bring those suits themselves.
They can.
Because by law, our website should be ADA compliant.
Correct. Yes. It's a very easy way, because you see, if you have a disabled person making the claim, if it goes to court, then the judge is more sympathetic for obvious reasons. Now, if not, anybody can raise a lawsuit for a website not be compliant because they're doing it on the behalf of the disability community. It's unfair. It should be right that ethically we should address everybody and we should alienate everyone. And this is a very good common conversation I think we can have on many topics. Alienation to other human beings in this last couple of years is very prevalent. Doesn't matter whether it's a racial thing, whether it's a language or a disability. Alienation, and I think that's a nicer way to put that, encompasses, well, if we disallow certain people the same equal quality as everybody else, we're not being fair. Now, the thing about if a disabled person raises a lawsuit against you, don't take it out against them, because unless you're in California, none of these people with a disability earn anything from the lawsuit. They're not
it's
allowed
just
to.
not going to the attorney.
It's all going to the attorney. They're not allowed to. Unless
Wow.
you're in California. There is a rule called the UNRRA rule. And that UNRRA rule actually does pay damages to people in California. People in
Wow.
California could actually raise the lawsuit in any state. And any state in which you sit, you can raise a lawsuit against any website owner in any other state as well.
Now, I know when you have a trademark issue or an IP issue or something like that, and a lawsuit is brought to a company, just closing down your website or whatever, does not get rid of that lawsuit. Is that the case here? It continues even if you go out of business and,
If it's gone to court, then it's going to follow the same legal procedures as it would have anyhow. If it has not gone to court, I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't know on this. I think it may depend on the type of lawyer and say, well, look, I can't pay that. I'm going to go out of business. So you're actually going to be trying to sue me for zero. I can only surmise. I wouldn't know. But if a lawyer is targeting a small business, theoretically, they know they have a few $1,000s, maybe $5,000, $15,000 to settle out in court. They haven't got that, they're going out of business. That's a hard lawsuit to take them to court and try and sue them.
right.
For that small amount of money.
Right. It kind of makes me nervous, because I've got 3 websites of my own.
I know.
And that kind of makes me nervous, and one of which is getting ready to go to market, and so it's almost scary to think about bringing attention to the brand and that website when this is going on out there.
Yes.
Now I know that you have you've run my sites through your platform, that your app you have, and that there's some work that has to be done on the sites, and stuff like that. But you said that that reaching 100% ADA compliant is not being realistic. Okay, what is the threshold for compliance?
There are 3 levels of compliance. There's an A, AA, and AAA. Industry standard, if it was to go to court, and everybody else is working to AA standard. As the color ratio is one of them, and we'll come back to that one. I think people would understand that if you think of brightness. If you're working on AA standard, that ratio is 4.5 times to 1 on a AA standard. On a AAA standard, it's 8 to 1. Imagine how bright the text would be on all your images and on all the text you write if the color ratio contrast was 8 to 1. That's going to limit a lot. So that could be a little bit unfair. So I don't see everything would be on your website would be 8 to 1. Some parts might, but some parts might not. So you couldn't achieve that perfect result. And also we have to consider that a person with one disability is easier to address than a person with maybe 2 or 3 different types of disabilities. Once you get in with people with multiple disabilities, we're now coming down to every person is almost unique depending upon the types of disabilities they have.
Right.
And with COVID being coming out now, we're getting more and more people with cognitive disorders, which is a disability or debilitating factor. Could be long-term, could be permanent.
So, in your website, for instance, you were talking about Flash, and things like that. Those are kind of, not only are they inhibited, or I guess you'd call it inhibited, for those who have a sensitivity to them. Okay. Yes. But not only that, I think more and more of the sites are getting away from Flash, and things like that. A lot of them are getting away and just going with, WordPress or, something to that effect. But where I was going is there was a time where all your sites, a great deal of your sites were just black background with, stark type on top of it, and things like that. now a lot of that has dissipated. But what you're saying is that black background is a deterrent for someone who has difficulty with color and color sensitivity and things like that, right?
Correct. Because
Okay.
if you're going to put a high font of bright white on black, that's the two extremes. So now you need to find a better contrast. Now, that might work for me. I had a conversation with two guys today. Both of them have visual impairment issues of some kind. One says, oh, I noticed that when I look at the website, all these bright colors are a bit too bright. And oh, I'm glad you reduced that. It made it easier for me to see. Meanwhile, the other guy went, yeah, but for me, I'll be the other way. I want the one that actually helps it to be oversaturated. Two people sat at the same point looking at the screen in which I shared. Now imagine if they're on their own computers, they can adjust it to their own liking. And it didn't matter. One was quite happy to have the black background. The other one was happy to have it white. It's giving choice. It's giving choice is what it is. And
I know. I mean, I'm not, I don't have color issues or anything like that, but I just know I like a clean site, something that is not got a lot of black or anything like that. It can have a lot of images on it, but I like them clean with a white background, the whole bit. So.
And that's the bit which I think when you've got graphic designers, web developers, and business owners, when you're thinking of brand and content, you should have a degree of element thinking, that's what I want. And why shouldn't you?
Right.
Could we suddenly go along to, let's say, McDonald's and Coca-Cola and get them to change the contrast of those bright reds on their website to, let's say, a wishy-washy pink? Well, now we're starting to think of probably another brand names.
Right.
Because
right.
You want to stand out.
Okay. Okay. So what's WCAG?
It's the WCAG is the worldwide
Compliance?
Content accessibility guide.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you can get that online if need be, right?
You can get that online. You can even go to, very simple, if you know what A.D.A is, there is an ADA.org website and it will have it on there.
Okay. So being A.D.A compliant does not necessarily mean that you have to have subtitles, right? Or anything like that on your videos, does it?
It does. That is part of it. Yes. The A.D.A is the American Disabilities Act. The American Disability Act signed by President Bush in 1991 originally was for bricks and mortar. In 2000, they addressed that it should really include websites. The Department of Justice wrote a statement saying that all websites should follow the same rules of places of public accommodation under Section 3 of the A.D.A. So you don't actually become A.D.A compliant, you probably become more WCAG compliant because those are the rules relating to websites. A.D.A is more related to the buildings and the infrastructure in where we live. Things that would also include in that would be the ramp on the street corner, the ramps and steps, the elevators. Well, so there's lots of part in the A.D.A. So you're more likely to say, I'm going to be A.D.A compliant. It's a ruling of the A.D.A and it's all branded there, but really the compliance is come from the WCAG.
Okay.
That's the guidelines you would follow.
All right. Interesting. So, we're coming up on the end of another podcast here. And Trevor, can you tell our audience, are there any tips, first of all, you want to leave with us?
Well, first of all, bear in mind when you're thinking about people with disabilities, approximately 1 in 4 people in America have a form of disability. So if you went into business to probably serve all, but if you're alienating 1/4 of your customers, that should be a concern. 92% of people with disabilities are brand loyal. Believe it or not, they're brand loyal. And they don't care about your brand name or the price they pay. They want a great service, and being able to do that equally in the same realms as anybody else freely will bring that brand loyalty more so than the customer service that you follow up with. If they have a great experience, they're going to tell their disability community, work with this company here because they did a great service.
Right.
When you think of spending online, who spends more per capita? Regular people or people with disabilities? Actually, people with disabilities, because they spend most of their time at home doing online shopping. They don't always want to be going out to the local stores, because if I don't feel like it today, I don't have to.
Yeah.
A lot of us, when we do that, say, oh, let's go out for the shopping experience. For somebody maybe in a wheelchair, or somebody with some visual impairment, or even auditive issues, think of, I have to do this in the day that is suitable to me. Maybe a Saturday afternoon at the supermarket isn't the best time for me to go because it's too crowded. I'll do it online. But a lot of us don't have a choice of what time we can go shopping. People have the freedom of choice to shop 24/7 these days. And how many of us really like to do it from the comfort of our own cell phone, laptop, tablet, computer at home? For example, 9:30 on a Sunday evening.
Well, I tell you what, since COVID started, that's all I've been doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the online sales have peaked and grown. Was it $330 billion are spent online?
Yeah.
60 odd billion was spent by the disability community, which was about just over 30% of the whole thing. But we're talking about only 25% of the population.
So tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you. Do you have any special offer or anything you want to give our listeners? You know, any of that?
Sure. We have a solution. Depends on the size of your website. What it is, it's a user interface where the person of any disability, or even not a disability, can come along and put an interface on your website. There is a setup fee for that, and for that, anybody that comes along via here, I will easily give them a 30% discount on their setup fee, and on their annual fee, because it is a monthly paid subscription, because it does give you automation. It checks your website every 24 hours. It gives you a compliance statement, which is very hard to find, especially from a web designer, but we will do that. And of course, if there are any changes or updates needed, you don't have to pay extra to include extra onto your website. If you have a blog, for argument's sake, and you put 3 extra blogs on there, you don't pay extra because you put extra blogs there. No, once we set up the website, it runs. And the other option is that we can give you a free month if you decide to pay for an annual fee. Those fees generally can start as low as $59 a month, up to $99 a month. It all depends on the number of pages on your website.
Okay. And how can they get a hold of you?
Well, you can use my phone number, which will be 407-360-3781. And of course, you can always use that as a text message service. They can either come refer to you directly, Dana, which is always a great one. You can always find me on LinkedIn, and I'm there as Trevor Gibbs. Company names that you may come across is something like Charity Revolution or Data Revolution. So it's kind of easy to find. And apart from that, of course, I've got my email, Trevor, Trevor, again, at charityrevolution.com.
All right. So that concludes our episode for today. So please leave a review on any of the streaming platforms you're listening to us on, or go to Charged Up Studio's Facebook page and leave a review there. Charged Up Studio is a product of Market Academy, the e-learning system designed specifically with the micro business owner in mind. For more information and to register for our many courses, go to marketatomy.academy. We look forward to talking more with you next week when we will be spending our time with another exciting guest eager to help small business owners like yourselves. Talk to you then, and go out and have another charged up week. Thank you.